Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back, and today we're going to work on a personal portfolio website similar to LinkTree, so let's get into it. Alright guys, let's get into it. So today we're going to build a website in React, and we're going to build a website very similar to LinkTree, but we're going to have some extra tabs to it. So for my personal website, so this is parsofthecard.com if you want to check it out. I'll link it in the description below. So basically on the homepage, there's going to be these links to different social medias, such as I have TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, GitHub, all on one page, and then we're going to get into the projects. And so these are just some of my main projects that I have also on my GitHub page. So I have like what I've worked on, and then we're going to create like these cards where we're going to pass in dynamic information from whatever information we're passing in. So we're going to pass in some information from different projects, such as like the name, the description, what language or framework we used, and we're going to attach the GitHub link, as well as if it's a live website like these two projects are for me, I can add this It's Live button and they can go check it out. So that's our project page, and then we're gonna have an about page, and all I have here is my profile picture, about me, and some info about me, as well as my resume. So let's get into actually building out this website. So the first thing you want to do is go to your terminal, and we're gonna go into the directory that we want to go into. So let's get into the documents, let's get into the documents folder. And now I'm going to do create React app, and we're going to create our React app. So I'm going to do create React app. If you don't have create React app installed as like a local executable, what you can do is you can just go to the React website. And as you see here, you're going to have to use npx and npx create React app, and then you're going to do the app name. But since I have it as a local executable here, I can just use it directly. So we're going to call this portfolio. So portfolio. So we're going to create a portfolio website. So we're going to take a second for that to build. All right, so once it's built, you can open up your code editor. For my code editor, I'm going to be using VS Code. So here we're going to open up our documents folder, and then I have portfolio here, and I'm going to open it up. And so the first thing we want to do is delete a bunch of these files that we don't need in our React app. So the first one's going to be app.css. We don't need that. App.test. We don't need the index.css. We don't need the logo, service worker, setup. And so we can delete all of these. And so once deleted, you can see that it strips down a lot of stuff that we didn't need in here. And so the next thing we want to do is install the dependencies that we're going to use in this project. So there's a cool VS Code trick here. We can do control backtick, and that'll open up the terminal. And so now we can install all our dependencies. So we want to do npm install, and then let's list out a bunch of the dependencies here. So all the dependencies that we're going to need, the first one is going to be iconify. So we want to say at iconify / icons, and then simple icons. So iconify is that library that I use to get the different icons for the different social medias. So this is super useful in React. So we're gonna pull this library in, and we're also gonna get iconify React, iconify, and then / React. So these are basically the two libraries that allow us to use these awesome icons. And the next one we want to get is Bootstrap. So we want to say boot and strap. And we want to get node Sass to use Bootstrap. Basically, I don't really like CSS, so I like using Bootstrap, so I don't really have to write that much CSS at all. And the last library that we need is going to be React Router DOM. And so React Router DOM allows us to create single page applications like a lot of people want to do nowadays with React. So that'll help us do that with React Router DOM. So let's let that install. Alright, so once that's done installing, what we want to do is we want to actually remove these extra libraries that we don't really need. So let's get rid of these 3 testing libraries. We don't really care about testing right now. We're just trying to kind of build our own personal website. You can include testing if you want to, but I'm not going to do that in this project. So we're going to get rid of those. And the first file we want to add is actually, so now that we're using node Sass, we're able to add Bootstrap directly in. So let's create our index.scss file. And so this will let us pass Bootstrap directly into our project. Oh, we actually need one more file. So we want to get npm install React Bootstrap. Alright, so now once we actually have all the libraries that we need, we can actually go to the React Bootstrap website and we can see what they have for SCSS and Sass. So what they tell you to do is just directly import this Bootstrap library directly into our index.scss here. So we can do that, as well as we might as well just set the background color right now. So let's do that. Makes our life easier from now on. So let's also set our height of our website to 100%, and we're going to set the margin to 0. And then we're going to do a background image actually. So we're going to set a background image. And what this is going to be a linear gradient. So a linear gradient, and inside of this linear gradient, we're going to say to top. All this is going to be a gradient changing color from the bottom to top basically. And so that's where we're going to say to top, and at the bottom we're going to just set black. And then I chose this specific color. You can make it any colors you want, and this gradient works for any colors. So you can just set 2 different colors here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 142, and I'm going to set 48A. So this is going to be a specific kind of bluish color, and we can save that. And before we do anything else, let's also just clear out our index.js file a little bit. We can get rid of the service worker stuff. We can change the index.css to SCSS for our Sass. And we can leave all this stuff. We're not going to go back into the index ever again. And in the app.js, let's clear out all this stuff as well. And let's just type in app. And so that's going to be our app. And then let's also get rid of this logo.svg and the app.css. So now we can take a look at the website so far. So let's type in npm start in our terminal. So some stuff that I forgot to add in the linear gradient. So if you just do this linear gradient, basically it'll just keep repeating over and over. So what we want to do is background repeat, and we want to actually remove that. So background repeat, and we want to say no repeat. And so that'll remove the repeat, and then we also want to set the background attachment to be fixed. So we don't want that to be moving around. So background attachment to be fixed. And so once we do that, now we're actually going to have a solid background changing from black to this bluish indigo color. So that's pretty cool so far, and you can see app over here a little bit. So let's get into actually building out this app now. The next thing we want to do is actually import a bunch of stuff. So we're going to say import. And here's how our routing is going to work. So we want to import the browser router as router. And we're going to import our route. We're going to import redirect. And we're going to import switch. So all of these imports are actually going to allow us to actually create our single page application instead of having it reload every time we open up a different part of our website. We're going to say from React Router DOM. So React Router DOM is super powerful in this way. So let's also just change this functional component into an actual constant. This is just kind of nitpicking. It doesn't really matter how you create this app component, but I like to have it as a constant, and then I like to export it as a constant. So that's completely up to you. Like I said, that has nothing to do with actually really anything important, but I kind of just like the syntax, and I just use that everywhere. So the first thing we want to do is create this router. How router works is it handles everything moving between pages. So we're going to have 3 pages in our app. Like I said, we're going to have the link, we're going to have the about, and the projects, right? So router is going to handle all our URL paths. And when you go to a certain URL path, you want a certain page to load up, right? So that's kind of how we're going to work here. What we're initially going to do is we want to create all our pages that we're going to be using. So one syntax that I like to use is instead of the source folder, what we're going to do is we're going to create a pages folder. And another folder that we're going to create is a components folder. So inside of the pages is going to be our 3 pages that we're going to create. So we're going to have the about.js. We're going to have the links page. So we're going to have the links.js. We're going to have our projects page. So projects.js. And for each of these, what we can do is we can just make them functional components for right now. So I have this cool extension inside of VS Code called React Snippets. And that just gives me these really quick snippets, so I don't really need to type much. Kind of boilerplate is just popped into here once I click that. So the quick shortcut for that is RSC, and it creates this functional component for me. So inside of here, let's just type in projects. Save that, RSC again, and let's type in links here. Save that, and then let's also go to the about, RSC, and then let's type in about and save that. So now inside of our app.js, what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna pass in a main here, and all this is doing is it's gonna separate. We're gonna put a nav bar above this, so it's gonna separate kind of the nav bar from the body from everything else. So that's going to be something that's kind of just nitpicky. You don't really need to do that, but I like to do it. So we're going to do that in this case. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to add a switch statement. So what switch does is, if you've done any kind of switch or case statement before, switch is going to take in the path of our URL. In our case, it's going to be just the home path, which is the /. It's going to be the projects and the about. And it'll take in each of these as kind of our expression that we're going to base our values off of. If the URL path has the /, that means it's at the home page. If it's at the projects path, then we're going to display the projects. And if it's at the about, we're going to display the about. Inside of here, we're going to display each of our routes. So our route is the actual path that we're going to. So path, and for our first one, we're going to just do the home path. And we want to say that we're only going to display this if it's an exact match. And here at our home path, we obviously have our links. We don't actually need second half of this. Let's just make it a self-closing. And now we can just kind of copy this over and over. Cool shortcut for this is Alt-Shift and then down on VS Code. And we can copy that 2 more times here. And so the next one we want to get is projects. And at the projects path, we want to not display links anymore. We want to display projects. So we're going to display projects there. And then in our third path, we're going to have the about. So we're going to say the about page. And we're not going to display links again. We're going to display about. The cool part about the switch statement is that if people are trying to go to different URLs that don't exist on our website, we obviously don't want to have some kind of error to happen. So we can add this cool thing called a redirect. And we can say we can redirect anyone home if they kind of go to the wrong URL. And we can just add that redirect at the end of here. And let's also make that a self-closing and save that. So once we save that, it's going to say, oh, a bunch of these are not defined. So we want to actually import these in. Let's import these 3 components. So let's get them from the pages. So let's say import, and we're going to get about from // and then it's going to be pages. And then we're going to get the about, and then let's copy this over a few times, and then let's get the links. And then let's also get the projects. So projects. All right, so now we have reference to all 3 pages. If we go back to our application here, so now you can see that there's links up in the corner here. And if we go to about, the about is up in the corner here. And then if we go to the projects, the projects is up in the corner here. We have our 3 pages set up. So all that we need to do is actually fill this with some data now. let's actually start building out our links components here. First thing we want to do for this is actually create a link list. What I like to do is whenever I'm displaying some type of list, I like to create the list component, and then each specific item in that list will have a separate component, and we're going to map these items. So what we're going to do first is go into the components folder, and then we're going to create an item, and then we're going to call it link list. So we're going to call it linklist.js, and we can just do RSC again. And so now we have link list. So let's just call that link list for right now, link list, and let's save that. And then let's also do, we're going to add another file, and we're going to call it link button.js, and let's just do RSC there, and let's put in link button here, link button. So actually, before we continue on this, let's actually just complete our navigation so that we can kind of go through the pages without any issues here. So the first thing we want to do is, again, just create a component. So we're going to call it main navigation.js. And so in our main navigation, we can just do RSC again. And first thing we want to do inside of this is we're going to actually create our nav bar. So we want to import a few things here. So we're going to say import, and we're going to say nav bar, and we're also going to get nav. And these are going to be from our React Bootstrap library. So React Bootstrap is super useful, so you don't need to stylize a bunch of nav bars or anything. They kind of have pre-styled nav bars they can just use. So we're going to use one of their pre-styled nav bars. So all we're going to do here is we're going to say nav bar, and we're going to do a background color, and then we're going to have a dark color as our background, and we're going to do a variant, and the variant is also going to be dark. And we're going to inject some style directly into here. You can create like a separate CSS file for this, but I just kind of did it once, so I was kind of too lazy to add a CSS file for this. So what we're going to do is a padding of 10 pixels here, 10 pixels. And then we're going to do a margin bottom of 20 pixels here. So let's put those quotes, 20 pixels. All right, so then now that we have that, let's close that out. So now that we have that, let's close out that nav bar. And what am I missing? Oh, I'm missing another colon right there. So now let's close out our nav bar. And so inside of here, the next thing we want to add is called the Navbar Brand. So let's add this. So Navbar Brand, all that is it's a place where you're going to put your logo. But in my case, I don't have a logo. So all we're going to do is we're going to just pass in my name. You can pass in your name here. So we're going to pass in H4. And inside of this H4, we're going to say Paris Alikari. And so another cool thing that we can do here is we can actually add something called a link. So we're going to add a link. So it's going to say as link. So what this is going to do is it's going to make it where we're using a single page application, like I said earlier. And this link is going to come from React Router DOM. And what that link is going to do is it's actually going to take us back to home. So we want to make this kind of a button where it's going to take us back home, back to the home page where we have all our links, right? In addition to this, we're going to have an on-click, and we're going to get back to that on-click, so we don't need to fill that out right now. Let's finish building out our nav bar here. In the H4, let's also add some styling real quick. So let's inject some style again. And inside of here, we're going to say a margin, and the margin is going to be 0. So let's have a margin of 0 there, as well as let's also add a class name to the Navbar brand. So let's do class name equals logo font. And we're going to do something real quick with creating a CSS file for this. So we're just going to add another file, and we're going to call it main navigation.scss. And inside of here, all we're going to do is I'm going to just import a library from Google Fonts. And basically, this is a type of font that I wanted to use for this project. And all we're going to do is we're going to add that to the logo font. So .logo font, and inside of here we're going to say font family, and we're going to say Hammersmith, and we're going to say Hammersmith 1 that we just got here, and then it's sans serif. All it's going to do is it's going to stylize our brand name that we have here. So in our case, it's just our regular name. And so let's get back to actually finishing out this nav bar. So then let's add a Navbar Collapse. So what a Navbar Collapse is kind of an interior component to the nav bar where you can actually add a nav functionality inside of your nav bar. So now we're going to actually add the actual nav part of our nav bar here. And so inside of the nav, what we're going to do is we're going to actually have a bunch of links. So that's what a nav does, right? It's just going to hold a bunch of links to our different pages. So here, what we want to do is we want to just add a few things here. So we're going to add a class name. And this is where we're going to actually be calling on our React Bootstrap. So we're going to do justify content end. So what this is going to do is going to put all our links that we're going to do our nav on, and it's going to put it towards the end of the bar, whereas the branding and our name is going to be towards the left. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add this thing called active key. So what active key is it's going to be our kind of handler on seeing which page we're actually on, and it's going to highlight that specific page that we're on. And you'll get to see this in a second here. So let's actually add our active key. So it's going to be current key. So we don't have this variable yet, but we're going to create this variable. And then we're going to do an onSelect function. And let's just set that to empty curly braces right now. So let's actually go ahead and create this thing called current key. And so what current key is going to be, it's just a value that we're going to be kind of controlling throughout our nav bar. We're going to have specific values for each of our pages. So in my case, what we're going to do is 1, 2, 3 for 3 pages. And so the home page is going to be 1, the projects page is going to be 2, and the about page is going to be 3. So we're going to create basically a variable that's going to hold these values. So that's what current key is going to be. So const, and we're going to do current key. And we're going to use this thing called useState. So we're going to set current key. So what useState is a React hook that allows you to manage the state of a variable. So in our case, it's current key. And so it lets you change that value in a manageable way without kind of having these irrational behaviors. So it's going to use state to do this. And how it does this is it creates this function called set current key. And set current key is going to allow us to change the value of our current key. So how are we going to actually set these values here, right? Let's actually create our links first. So our first link that we want to add is a nav.link. So this first link is going to be our links page, obviously. And so inside of here, let's actually pass in a few parameters here. So we're going to do it set as a link. And again, what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to be a single page application where it's not going to keep reloading the page. So that's the power of React Router DOM. And we're also going to pass in an event key. And what this event key is going to be, again, is those 3 values that we're going to have. So event key is going to handle for the links page, right? Whenever the event key is 1, it's going to go to the links page. And so where we want this to take us, we need to actually pass in a path. And so that path is going to be the home page. And so now we can copy this a few more times. I don't know what I just did. So we can go to the home page. And so now we can copy this a few times here. So let's just copy that over. And then now let's add the projects. And let's call that projects. And then let's call this about. And let's add about. So again, this is just going to allow us to have these different values. So every time the key changes to a 2, we're going to know that we're going to be on the projects page. And every time it's a 3, we're going to know that we're on the about page. And then this is again going to be handled by changing the value of the current key. How the onSelect works is when we select a link, how are we going to change the value of the current key, right? So that's why we actually need to pass in a function. So we're going to pass in an arrow function here. So this arrow function is actually going to take what key we selected. So it's going to be selected key, and it's going to pass it into this arrow function here. And in this arrow function, all we're going to do is we're going to do set current key. And we're going to set current key to that selected key. So again, what is selected key? Selected key is the key that we're going to be passing right here. So it's going to be whatever event key is getting through, and that is going to be passed as the selected key. And selected key is going to go to our function called set current key, and it's going to set our current key right here. And so again, current key is going to be handling what is our active key. So again, active key is going to handle which one is highlighted at that time. And like I said earlier, we have a link here in our home name, so we also want to actually add an onClick here. So this onClick is going to be super simple. We're just going to pass another arrow function, and we're going to be set, all we're going to say is set current key, and we're going to set that to our home page. Now we kind of have our navbar set up, so we can just pass that into here, into our app.js. And so let's add our main navigation. So now we're going to have a navbar at the top of our application here. So let's add that in, and use state is not defined. So let's add use state over here. And let's save that. All right, so now that we have use state, you'll see that our links are all over here, and there's just something weird going on with the styling. Let's try to fix that. Oh yeah, so we haven't imported our actual styling yet, so let's import that. So let's import main navigation / main navigation .scss, and let's save that. So now our styling is actually impacted over here. All right, so what I forgot to add is that we're gonna have this collapse. We're gonna actually have a class name here, and that's gonna be justify content end. So here now we should have all the links to the right for our navigation. We're gonna have our logo, which is just our name, to the left. So as you see, if we click on the projects page, we have the projects right here. And then if we click on home, we're gonna get our links, and then that's also gonna highlight our links. So something weird that's gonna happen here that we gotta fix is that, say I'm on the about and I refresh, it's gonna go to the links, but we're still gonna be showing the about component here. So we don't want that to happen. So how are we gonna handle that? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use this thing called useEffect. And what useEffect does is it runs once when the page loads, and then it only runs again when a certain variable changes. We're gonna have this variable called path, and with this variable called path, we're going to actually get the location of where we're at in our path. So we're gonna get the path name. So using the path name, we're actually gonna find out, okay, I'm on the about page, so now I wanna stay at the about page. We're still at the about page in our URL, but in our navigation, it thinks we're at the links page, because every time you kind of refresh the page, what it's gonna do is it's gonna reset any variable values that you've set before. So every time the page refreshes, we actually wanna do a check on our path. So how we're gonna do this is we're gonna pass in a switch statement here, and useEffect again has a dependency that we can pass into these brackets right here, and we can pass in the path. So every time the path changes, we want to kind of run this case statement. In our switch statement up here, what we want to pass is the path value, and then we're going to do a case statement, and the first value is going to be our about, and this value is going to be set to 3. We decided earlier, right, that this is going to be a 3, and this is completely arbitrary. You can have it completely the other way around. So you can have links as 3 and projects as 2 still, and then about as the 1. But I just did it this way. You guys can pick your own way if you want. So actually we don't need this second one. So, and then we're going to create the default, which is going to be 1. So let's just take that. And so this is whenever we're going to hit our home page, we want that to be 1. And we want to add a break there. And then whenever we get to our projects page, we want that to be a 2. Use effect is not defined, so let's add that. Now, once we go back to our page, what's going to be cool is that every time now that we refresh, it's going to actually run that use effect. And that use effect is going to determine which key we're on, right? So now we're going to be on key 3, which is going to go to the about page. And then if we go to key 2, and then we want to refresh, it's going to check the path. We're on the projects path, so it's going to set it to 2. So that's kind of the awesome power of use effect, is that it's going to run one time when the page loads, and then if the path ever changes in the meantime, right? So now we could actually change this path, and we can call the about page here. And so in the about page, then it's going to go to the about, right? So that's kind of the cool power of use effect. So it's going to run every time the page loads, as well as whenever this variable changes. So now we're basically done with our navigation bar. So let's get into actually building back out linked list as well as the link buttons. So the first thing we want to do in the link list is import a few items. So we're going to import, and it's going to be list group. And we're going to import image from React Bootstrap. And again, React Bootstrap is just a bunch of stylized, pre-stylized components that we can just use. So then the next thing we're going to import is the link button from ./link button. So we have that link button there from before that we created. All right, so now inside of here, what we're going to do is we're going to create a const links. And this is just going to be an array of all of our links, our social media links that we have. And so I'm just going to copy these over. You guys can put whatever social media links you need in here. And so I'm just going to copy these over. So these are all the social media links I have. And so now inside of our return here, we're going to create a list group. So that's the item I imported earlier. And all a list group is it shows a bunch of items in a column. And this is just a super quick, easy way to create a column. And inside of here, we're going to add a div. And inside of the div, we're going to actually pass in an image. So what this image is going to be is our profile image. So our image, and then we're going to pass in an alt here. So an alt, every image needs an alt, because that's just kind of for accessibility reasons. Your browser kind of wants you to do that. It's not 100% required. So then we're going to do a width of 120 for our profile image, and then we're going to have a height of 150. These are just kind of the measurements that worked for me. You guys can use whatever measurements that you want. For my specific image, that it just happened to work like this. Then we're going to add an image source. And here what we're going to do is we're actually going to pass in a interpolated string here. And this is because we're going to actually use something called the process.env. And so what that does is it gets from your environment your public URL. And so what the public URL is actually in relation to this folder called the public folder. And so this is where you usually want to put your image assets and other assets like that. And so what that allows you to do is access that directory. Within that directory, we can have an image. So in my case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull an image over, and we're going to just add it over here. And it's just my profile image. And so we're going to actually reference that image now. So now that I have access to that, so then I can say 2019, and I can say Adhikari Paris.jpg. So now I have actually loaded a JPEG as the source, and that source is in my public folder, and that's what process.env.public URL allows me to get. So now I can close out this image, and we can save that. So then now if we want to see the link list, let's actually go to our links.js page, and then let's actually just pop in our link list here. Links, link list. And so let's pop that in. It's saying link list is not defined because it didn't import it for me. So let's actually import it ourselves. So link list from, we're gonna actually get out of this folder, and then we're gonna get into our components, and then we're gonna get our link list. So then now inside of here, we have our link list, and so we see our profile image so far. So let's get back to our link list. And so now, as we saw, our kind of profile image is kind of way off center. So let's add some quick Bootstrap styling to this. So let's do class name equals. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use Bootstrap grid. So we're gonna say MX, and we're gonna use large is 5. So this is, again, when you have like a large page, it's gonna use 5 spaces. And then we're gonna do margin right of 3. And then we're gonna do a margin left of 3. And then we're gonna do a display flex, and we're gonna do a flex column. And then we're also gonna do align, and then we're gonna say items and center. So now we kind of have our photo centered here. So let's actually start adding in our links. So the next thing we wanna do is we wanna actually pass in an H5 right here. So H5. And since it's similar to LinkTree, what we're gonna do is we're gonna just pass in our username. This is totally not necessary, but I just wanted to add it because I was kind of copying LinkTree's look. And so here we're gonna just add a quick margin on the bottom of 4, and then we're gonna make the text white so we can actually see it. And so now we have our profile image along with our username. So let's actually add now the links in here. Oh, and I forgot one thing here. Let's add our margin at the bottom. So let's do a class name, and let's do MB4 here. So let's add a little margin at the bottom there, and then let's also do rounded edges. So all that does is it rounds our picture out, as well as it gives us a little space between the picture and our username. So the next thing we want to do is actually map out our components of our button. So we're gonna do this bracket. So what this bracket allows you to do is write actual pure JavaScript within our JSX, right? So now we can do links, and then we can map these links. And inside of here, we can pass an arrow function. And what map does is it deconstructs a list into specific items, and it kind of loops over each of these items, right? So now we're gonna pass in, so when we do link, it's going to deconstruct into each link one by one. So we're going to take that link, and we can actually add extra parentheses here so that we can render this directly here. So then we can say link button, and we want to pass in a key, and the key can be anything. Sometimes I like adding another parameter here, but just for sake of ease right now, we're going to do link, and then we're going to say link is equal to link as well. So we can pass these as props, and then we can close out. And so now we're actually going to be mapping each link to a link button. So we can create these buttons. So now if we take a look here, now we see all these link buttons here, but obviously they're not in button form yet. So let's put them into button form right now. The next thing we're going to do is just import a bunch of things into the link button here. The first thing we're going to import is use state, and we're also going to get use effect. So again, use state allows you to manage state of a variable, as well as use effect, again, loads on the beginning of the page. And so import, we're also going to import button from React to Bootstrap. So we're just going to take their buttons, makes our life super easy, and we're going to get their buttons. And we're also going to import our icons. So there's a bunch of icons we need to import here. So let's get just the general icon library here first. So we can create any icon. And we want to get that from @icon-ify and React. And so now we're going to actually import each of our individual icons. So I'm just going to copy them over. You guys can take a look at all of these. So I'm going to get the TikTok icon. So I got this from this specific creator called Icon Simple Icons. So there's a lot of different creators in the Iconify library, and this is kind of one of them. So I basically got all of my icons from this specific creator. So Icon Simple Icons. And we're gonna also have one more thing. We're gonna have an import of a specific CSS file. We haven't even created, or SAS file, and we haven't even created it yet, but let's import it right now. So with limit.scss. So let's actually create this. So inside of the components folder, let's create this. So with limit.scss. And this SCSS file is going to be super simple. All it's going to do is it's actually going to limit the size of our buttons, so the buttons don't go completely across the screen. We're going to have it so it's actually very mobile friendly. So we're going to set a max width of 700 pixels. So once we do that, basically it's not going to let our main page go past 700 pixels, and it's going to kind of keep it very mobile friendly. Inside of our link button now, all we need to do is actually take in our props, right? So we actually pass in props here, which are our links. Oh, we don't want this.props, we just want props. So it's actually going to take in our link here, and then we're going to map that into a button. So we're going to take React Bootstrap's button, and we're going to take the links that we just passed into here. And now we're going to create our links page. So the first thing we want to do is here is actually pass in a few attributes. So we're going to do a variant. And so the variant is going to be an outline light. There's a lot of different variants. You can look into all these different variants if you want to kind of change up how your button looks. And we're going to add an href. And this href is actually going to be to the actual link that we're going to pass in here, right? So it's going to be props.link. And then we're going to pass in a quick class name here. And all we're going to do is we're going to add a little margin at the bottom of each of these, and we're going to do a max button. So what max button does is it creates this actually kind of this fat long button that we kind of saw earlier. So if you go back to my page, it's going to create this really fat button rather than usually what Bootstrap would do is it create kind of this smaller button. As we can see here, we can go to components and we can go to buttons. So it usually create like kind of a smaller button like this. But if we do fat button or max button, it's going to create a button that's really long like this. So kind of a wider button. So that's kind of useful for us in our case to kind of replicate that LinkTree look. And then we're also going to do a size large button, and then we're going to create a block. So again, all of these max button, size large, and block is going to actually create this look that we have here of this button. Inside of here, we're going to pass in our icon. So how are we going to get our icon from us passing in a link? Now, the next thing we want to do is actually, so based on what props are coming through, we want to be able to pick the right icon for that scenario. All we're going to do is we're going to use state to kind of set the icon value. And so we're going to do set icon as our function here, and then we're going to do use state, and we're just going to initially pass in an empty string. It's not even necessary to pass in a value, but I'm just going to pass in an empty string right now. And we're also going to use effect so that we're going to be dynamic in case in the future we're going to have it where maybe our links are going to change, maybe they're going to be dynamic links or something like that. So we're going to have it kind of based off of the props here. So props. So inside of here, what we're going to do is we're going to put a bunch of if statements to check which prop item is coming through, so which link is coming through. And then we want to match it to that link so we can display the right icon. All we're going to do is we're going to say if, and then here we're going to do props.link.includes. And we're going to check if it includes YouTube. So that's going to be our first one. And then if it includes YouTube, then we want to do set icon. And then we're going to do icon. And then we're going to do icon equals YouTube icon. Right? So we just got that here. And so now basically we want to do this like 15 more times to get all of our icons in. So I'm just going to do that. So we're going to check, okay, does it include, if the URL includes YouTube, then we're going to populate with the YouTube icon. If it's Instagram, then we're going to get the Instagram icon. If it's Twitter, then Twitter, TikTok, GitHub, right? So I think you guys got the idea there. So now we actually want to display our icon. So again, we're just going to use the JavaScript brackets and we're going to pass in the icon value here. Now, once that we do that, we're basically done with the links page. And so now this is how our links are looking. So we have the TikTok icon, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, GitHub, and our links page is basically done. So now let's get on to our projects page. So now for our projects page, we're going to do something very similar to this. We're going to create a project list as well as a project card, right? So now let's go to our components folder. Let's create a project list.js. And then let's also create a file for project card. So project card.js. And so let's just set these up with basic components for right now. So let's call this project card, save that. And then let's go to project list. Let's do RC again. And then let's pass in project list here, project list, and let's save that. Now our project list has to display in the projects.js, so let's take it here and let's get our project list into here, project list. So let's pull that in and let's import that in. So let's do import and let's do /, and then we're gonna do actually get out one more, and then we're gonna do / and then we're gonna get to components, and then we're gonna get project list. Right, so now we can display our project list, import project list. So I didn't write that, project list from components project list. So now we have project list in here. So now if we go to our projects, we can see project list is popping up there, right? So now when we go to our project list, we want to do something pretty similar to what we did before. So we want to do something pretty similar to what we did on the link list. We want to actually populate a bunch of projects. So we're going to create this thing called const projects, and we're going to just set this equal to a list, and then we're going to set that equal to a list of objects, and each object is going to have a name, URL, they're going to have a GitHub, and then they're going to have languages, and then they're going to have a description. Each of these projects is going to have each of these values, so I'm just going to plug in one here for you guys so you get an idea of what we're doing here. So, and I had an image before, but I can get rid of that. We're not going to use image in this case, but if you want to add an image, you can, but I'm not going to go over that in this case. So we're going to have a name. So like in my case here, we're going to have React e-commerce store. We're going to have a URL. So if your website is live or something like that, if you have a live project, you can add a URL here. And then we're gonna have a GitHub link. So we're gonna just call that GitHub, and we're gonna have a GitHub link here. And then whatever languages you use, so I used React.js. And then I'm gonna quick description of kind of describing the project and what I did. So you can add a bunch of these projects here. So I'm just gonna fill out a bunch of my other projects that I had on GitHub. And I'm going to add them to the rest of this list, and I'm going to get rid of this image property because I had that there before, but I never actually used it. So we can get rid of all these image properties. When we save that, so now we have this projects filled with all our project information. So now we actually need to pass this information to our actual project cards, right? So let's actually create our list right now. So let's make it so that we have a nice list going on. So we're going to have kind of 3 layers of divs here. So the first one is going to be an outer div, and we're going to have, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to have an h2, and inside of this h2 we're going to do what I worked on, ... and then after that we're going to do a div again, and this div is actually going to have a class name, and that class name is going to be the container. And inside of this div, we're going to have another class name. We're going to have another div with the class name of row. And we're actually going to justify content here. and we're going to justify that center. And inside of here, we're going to do our mapping. I'm just going to type in mapping for right now. And let's go back to our outer div and let's add some quick styling to this. So it's going to be a class name equals. And so we're going to add quick Y direction padding here. So we're going to add a 3 padding on the Y direction. So this is going to add both the top and bottom padding of 3. We're going to make the display flex. And then we're going to do a flex column. So flex column, all that does is it creates a column out of these components. So I'm going to have the H2 on top of this container div where we're going to be doing the mapping to each of the cards. So I want this H2 on top, so that's why I'm going to do flex column. And then I also want to justify all of this stuff center. So I'm going to say justify content, and I'm going to say center. Then I'm going to do align items, and then I'm going to say center, and then I'm going to do align content, and then it's going to be center. So that's going to align all the stuff center. And so you can kind of see here what I've worked on, mapping, and in this mapping, obviously we want to map out to all our projects. Before we do that, obviously this is in kind of this grayish color. Let's kind of add some styling to that real quick. So let's do style equals, let's pass in the styling directly. So let's do color, and let's just say white. Boom. So now we can actually see what I've worked on. We can't see the mapping yet, but that doesn't matter right now because we're going to create our cards, right? So inside of here, now we actually want to do the mapping. So let's take that mapping and let's pass in some pure JavaScript into here. So let's say take our projects and map this out. And like I said before, we're going to pass an arrow function inside of this map so that we can map out to each of our functions. So we don't want to do a bracket, we want to do a parentheses here so we can return that directly. And inside of our arrow function, we actually want to pass our project, right? So for each projects, out of all the projects, there's a singular project. And then we're going to also pass an index for the key, like I mentioned before. That's a really easy way to get the key as well. Project card. So let's get that project card, and then let's close it, self-close it, and then let's pass all of our props into here. So let's pass our key, and then this is going to be the index, and then let's pass our URL, and then that's obviously going to be our project.url, and then we're going to have a name, and then that's going to be our project.name. And then we're going to have a GitHub, and then that's going to be project.github. And then we're going to have our languages, and then that's going to be project.languages. And then we're going to have a description, and then that's going to be project.description. So that's basically all the props that we're passing here. We save that, and then we don't have project card defined because we haven't imported it yet. So let's import that in. So let's get project card from project card. So now we have project card. We passed in all our data, but obviously it's not going to show anything besides just project card across here, right? So now let's go to our project card and let's actually create our project card. So again, let's start by importing a few things. So let's import button and card. And both of these are going to come from React Bootstrap again. So we don't really need to do much CSS at all. So then let's also import our icon so we can have our GitHub icon in here from @iconify, and then we're going to get iconify React. And let's just get in our import for GitHub in here. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to actually just have a card here that we just imported. So we just got a card. And so let's style this card a little bit. So let's do class name. And we're going to pass in a few classes. So we're going to use the grid again. So we're going to create a column that is 12 in length. And we're going to do a column when it's a medium screen, we're going to do 6. So we're going to do 6 in length. And then if it's a large one, we're we're going to do 3. And then we're going to do a margin in the X direction of 3, and then a margin in the Y direction of 3, right? So that's some super quick bootstrap right there for our card. And so now we can add the actual body of our card. So we're going to do card.body. And so you can import this directly up here, but it's just super simple to do just card.body up here inside of the card itself. So inside of the card itself, now we can add a title. So we can do card.title. And inside of the title, obviously we can put our props.name now, right? So props.name. So we passed in the name from the props. Now we have access to that. And then so now we can also add in a quick description of what we're doing. So we can do card.text. So all card.text does is it kind of creates a p tag almost where you can kind of put in your description for that card. So inside of here, let's do props.description. Let's save that, and props is not defined because we don't have props up here. So now we have our props, and so let's take a quick look. So this is already looking pretty close to what we need in the finished product here. We have each of our projects coming through with a name and description. So the only things we need to really add next are the buttons itself, right? So as well as the language. I almost forgot about the language. So let's add one more piece of text here. So let's do card.text, and let's pass in the language. So props.language, languages. So this could be a language or framework. So I'm actually going to pass in a strong tag in here real quick. So then I'm going to say language/framework to make your life easy, so you don't really need to think about, okay, is this a framework, a language? Do I need to separate these? Do I need to do some kind of messing around to get this to work properly? So now we have our language in here. So all we need to do is actually add our buttons next. So let's do that outside of our body, because what I found out is that if you add the button inside of the body, it's going to kind of hug up on the text rather than kind of be at the bottom of the card. So we kind of just want to add it at the bottom of the card itself. So let's add this quick div here. So let's add this div to kind of separate out these buttons at the bottom. And let's do a class name, and let's add the class name of dflex. And that's going to make the display flex again. And let's make a row of buttons. So we're going to do flex row, and then we're going to justify content around. So that's going to space out our buttons properly, and then we're going to add a margin bottom of 3. So if we go back to our website over here, it's going to space out these buttons for GitHub and live, as well as it's going to add a little bit of margin at the bottom so we can actually have a nice looking card rather than these buttons kind of hugging up the bottom a little bit too much. So that gives us that. So now let's pass in a few things. Let's pass in our button here. And inside of this button, we want to have the GitHub button, right? So let's do an icon, and then our icon equals, and we're going to do a GitHub icon, and then we're going to say href equals props.github. So now when you click on this button, it's going to take you directly to GitHub. So for the live part, we're going to do something kind of cool. So we're going to pass in some JavaScript here. So we're going to say props.url. So we're going to check if the URL was blank. So if we go back here, what I did for projects that weren't live, I just passed in an empty URL here. So we're going to check if this URL is empty. So it's going to say not equal to an empty string. And if it's not equal to an empty string, then only, we want to say and, then only we're going to have a button that's going to say it's live. And then we're going to save that. So what this is doing is it's going to check, okay, is this part true? And if it's true, then we're only going to display this. If it's not true, then we're not going to display it. It's almost better than a ternary operator in our case because we don't have a second option. We kind of only want to display this in case this exists. So this is how it's looking so far. So we can add a little bit of styling here. So we can add a variant to the GitHub button first. So we can say variant, equals, oh wait, I realized I was on the wrong page. So this is how it looks so far. So they just all look blue. They're the normal primary color of the button. So we kind of want to kind of change that up. So let's say outline primary. So now the GitHub button is going to look a little bit nicer now. So it has this kind of nice look, and then when you hover over it, it looks like it did before almost. And for the It's Live one, let's do something a little bit different. Let's make that green like I had in the finished product here. So let's set this button icon. Let's add a variant here. Variant equals, and this one's going to be outline success. So then once we do that, it's going to change it up to a green look. So now we have the blue for the GitHub and then the green for It's Live. So then when you click on it, it'll obviously go to your project. So in our case, I can click on React e-commerce. Oh, and it's not going anywhere. So let's actually, oh, it's because I didn't add a href here. So let's add the href. And so let's do props.url. So now, once I have that, it'll actually take me to the product page that I created before. So that's something pretty cool. So now our projects page is all done. So let's get to our about. So something cool about our about page is that we can build it all right here. We don't need any components. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import our list group like we did before. So import, and we're going to get list group, and then that's going to be from React Bootstrap, and then we're going to import our button and image from React Bootstrap. Oops. So we're going to import our list group, our button and image from React Bootstrap, and then we're also going to import some CSS. So we're going to say import components, and then we're going to import with limit limit.scss. So all that is to do is with limit. So for our about, if I look at my page right here, it's just going to make it super mobile friendly so basically this sentence could kind of go all the way across the page. I made it smaller so that it would kind of have to wrap around and create more of a paragraph. So the next thing we want to do is actually add the list group right here. So list group, and inside of this list group, what we're going to do is we're going to have a div, and let's just add the styling right now. So class name equals, let's do mx. When it's large, we're going to do 5. And then margin right of 3, margin left of 3, and we're going to do a margin bottom of 5. And then we're going to do deflex, display flex, and then we're going to do a column. And then we're going to do align items center, and then we're going to do text also center. So that's going to just be centering our text. So it's going to make it more like this instead of like kind of left facing or anything like that. So now inside of this div, what we're going to do is we're going to pass in our profile image like we did before. So we can just copy that exactly from what we did before, and we can save that. So now our profile image should pop up here. And so now under that profile image, what we're going to do is we're going to have an about me. So we're going to say about me. So let's pass in an h4. So in this h4, we're going to do a strong. So we're going to, this strong, I don't know how necessary this is, but I'm just going to put it for our cause. So let's say about me, ... And this h4, let's give it a quick styling. Let's do class name equals, and we're going to do a text white to make sure we can see it, and then we're going to do a margin bottom of 5. Gives us a little spacing, and then we're going to do a max button. And boom, so we have this about me kind of section here. So now that we have that, let's do under the h4, let's add an h5, And in this H5, what we're going to do is we're going to have some information about us. So I'm just going to copy that in here. You can put whatever information you want. I just kind of put some generic information about myself. And then now under this H5, let's actually add a button. And this button is going to lead to our resume. So let's change up the look of this button real quick. So let's make it a variant, and let's make that variant outline light. And let's do an href equal to, like we did before, let's do some string interpolation. So let's do that and $, brackets, and inside of here we're going to reference process.env, and we're going to get our public URL. And then in addition to our public URL, we want to get actual resume here. So let's get our resume. So it's going to be Adhikari Paris 2020.pdf. So let's actually just throw in our resume here. So I'm going to take my resume and just pop it into the public folder here. So boom, now we have my resume. So then when we save it, now this button will actually link to my resume. So now that button actually links to my resume. So let's kind of add some styling here. So this, we actually should change it. I realized I was reading the wrong styling here. This is just MB4 for the about me part. And then for the class names of here, we can say text white and margin bottom of 5, and then a max button for this. So then now we're getting this kind of look for our text underneath, which is describing about ourselves. And so now for the button, we can say a size large button. So this will actually give us the large look. And then we also can just name this a download button. So then we can do my resume, and boom, now we have our resume here. So then if you click this button, it'll download. So then now basically our website's done. Well, it's not basically done, it is done. So now we have our links page. So if you click on any of these links, so if I click on my TikTok page, it will take me to my TikTok. And if I go back, it'll go back to my page. And if I go to my projects page, I can click on any of these GitHub links and it will take me to my GitHub. Why isn't it taking me to my GitHub? Let's fix that. So let's go to link button. So I realized I put the href in the wrong spot. So we should take this href out of the icon and add it to the button. So now when you click on the entire button itself, it should take you to wherever you want to go. So now our functionality is completely done. So we have our live website check, and we also can go to GitHub, and then we have our about, and we can also download our resume. So then it'll change it, boom, download your resume, click cancel because I'm not trying to download my resume again, and our website is done. And that's all I got, guys. Hope you liked it, and like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you later. Peace.